Hey there boys and girls, my humble larvae or squid hatchling for those who are not versed in marine biology who are on the precipice of their inaugural motorcycle journey. I'm sure you're scared, afraid, crying yourself to sleep every night as you contemplate those first few rides. You won't crash. You won't be bullied for riding a GSX-R 250. Your dad will be proud of you. I'm here to get your head straight and clue you into the top 5 fears that new motorcyclists have. The first fear is the big one, the fear of crashing or dropping your motorcycle. You've probably heard some grizzled old riders say something like it's not about if you gotta lay your bike down, it's when. If my new age crystal bearing millennial peers have taught me anything, and by taught I mean blasted their social media accounts for all to see, it is that the first step to achieving success is through manifestation. You must envision yourself as a skilled and capable rider. And if you let old one-legged Lenny pollute your fragile soft brain with negative thoughts about the inevitability of crashing, you are only doing yourself a disservice and giving yourself a negative outlook instead of a positive outlook. Let's be honest, motorcycle crashes do happen, but many of them are preventable. Oftentimes, motorcycle crashes involve just the rider and no other vehicles on the road. They can be caused by speeding or riding overconfidently or beyond your means or ability, especially when combined with alcoholous or wet road conditions. There are countless different scenarios that you can prevent yourself as the rider by exercising your skills, building good habits, and remaining humble and not riding beyond your means. I get it, you have 6 months of riding under your belt and hop on a 600, you are going to feel invincible, but you have to remember you're not. No matter how fast and agile your bike is, you are not going to be able to outrun the car that pulls out into your lane in front of you. That brings me to my next point. One of the best skills to have to prevent crashes with other vehicles is being constantly aware of your surroundings and other cars in front of you. Make a habit of clocking all the vehicles in your vicinity and try to predict their behavior. Anticipate that a car in typical car fashion may change lanes or turn without signaling, or go all the way to the end of the merge lane before getting over and cutting off the other cars or motorcyclists in front of them. You should always assume cars cannot see you and anticipate having to do all of the seeing and thinking for all the car drivers on the road. Similarly, it is a good habit to not just ride your motorcycle in traffic as if you're a car, meaning slowly moseying along in stop and go traffic. It is in situations like this when you think you're safe, you're barely moving, inching along the road, just waiting for things to speed up. It is in moments like this when you let your guard down and stop keeping an eye on all the cars around you. In many instances, it is actually safer for a motorcyclist to ride more aggressively to get ahead of the cars and move beyond traffic. Don't be a squid in lane split at 186 miles per hour, but make an attempt to move beyond the slow traffic and not just sit there like a sitting duck between dozens of cars whose drivers are likely distracted. It is in instances like that that not only do you start to lose focus as a rider, but the cars around you are also losing whatever limited focus they had to begin with. On a lighter note, if you're afraid of just dropping your bike, like tipping it over in a parking lot or some other slow speed crash like when you lose your footing or something, don't sweat it. Those types of accidents are almost inevitable, but both you and your bike will also likely be unharmed. So don't sweat it too much, brush it off, and make sure you have practice picking your bike back up so you won't be stuck in the middle of the Whole Foods parking lot asking complete strangers for help.
Guys, if only there was a way to securely put your phone on your motorcycle to be able to use it while you ride for navigation, directions, or music that wasn't some cheapo brand that you bought on Amazon. It's kind of weird that you spent all that money on your motorcycle and all that money on your phone, and then you bought a $20 phone mount that's just gonna break out on you. Listen, cut yourself some slack. You made some mistakes. You're not going to make any mistakes going forward because you're going to buy something from Rockform. They're a proud supporter of our channel. We've been working with them for over 3 years, and we love what they do because they make the highest quality phone mounts for your phone onto your motorcycle. But it doesn't end there. Rockform's whole thing is the ecosystem around the phone case. So you get the case for your phone. You can then take this phone and put it onto a new Rockform mount. You can magnetically attach it to a workbench or anything else like that and get yourself all the accessories available as well. I got a special offer for you if you hit the link down below and you can use the code YN25. Get yourself 25% off your order from all Rockform products. It is a great deal and you're not going to want to miss it. Check them out down in the description below. Now let's get back to the show.
Another fear new riders have is not being able to handle their motorcycle's power. The answer to this is obvious. Get a beginner bike. But if you're adamant about starting on something a bit larger, there are some simple ways to make sure you're in control of your bike at all times and don't end up whiskey throttling yourself into somewhere you don't belong, like off a bridge or through a storefront window. The biggest thing to keep in mind is your throttle control. On a motorcycle, throttle is everything. The throttle isn't just what makes your bike go yeet, it is also what keeps your bike upright and what keeps traction to the rear wheel. So one of the most important habits you should should develop early to help keep you in control of the motorcycle is get a good feel for your throttle. On a smaller beginner bike, this will be pretty easy. A small motorcycle isn't going to make boatloads of power the minute you open the throttle, but a bigger motorcycle with more torque will definitely knock you back a little bit if you don't have the proper finesse. Be smooth and steady as you open the throttle and get a good feel for the progression of the power. Be gentle in the way you release the clutch as well as to not dump the clutch and suddenly put tons of power to the rear wheel, which can cause you to wheelie or lose traction. Getting a good feel for the throttle is the first step in being comfortable controlling your bike. Handling a motorcycle in situations like turning requires a different set of skills. A lot of it can be intuitive if you've got a good sense of balance or have spent time on dirt bikes or even street bikes. Otherwise, it may take a bit more time to understand the way a motorcycle moves. Motorcycles and other two-wheeled machines like bicycles have a gyroscopic effect, which in part help keep the motorcycle upright, and secondly changes the way a motorcycle steers. At super slow speeds like in a parking lot, your steering is normal, meaning if you turn your handlebars to the left, your bike goes left. But at higher speeds, to say anything higher than like 5 miles per hour or so, your bike becomes gyroscopic and you have to counter steer, meaning if you move the handlebars left, your bike will dip into the right. It sounds much more confusing than it is, and once you get on a bike and get used to moving the handlebars at different speeds, you'll see what I mean. Counter steering will give you a lot more control turning your bike at high speeds as opposed to just leaning the bike over. Similarly, slow speed maneuvering like in a parking lot of an off-road situations, it can help to counterbalance your bike, meaning leaning off the motorcycle opposite of the way you're turning, which will allow you to lean the bike at a sharper angle without the risk of it tipping over. Practice these skills and you will have no reason to fear controlling your motorcycle. Another fear new motorcyclists have is riding in bad weather. This one I think truly is inevitable, unlike crashing. I don't know a single rider who hasn't gotten stuck in a handful of completely unforeseen rainstorms. When it first happens, especially if you're not expecting it, can be a little unnerving. But if you remember a few things, you will be completely fine. The first thing to remember when riding in the rain is that it will affect the traction your tires have on the road. In instances like this, be extra cautious with your application of both the throttle and the brakes, as too aggressive use of either can cause you to slip or lose traction. Also, be wary that it may not just be water on the road. The beginning of a rainstorm is the worst for road conditions as the water washes up any oil or road grime that may have built up on the roads. This oil likes to accumulate specifically in the center of the lane. It is usually inadvisable to ride in the center of a lane for this reason regardless of weather, but it is especially important in a rainstorm. Many modern bikes come equipped with a rain mode that automatically dampens the application of the throttle so you don't risk losing traction with a super powerful engine. It is always important to be wary of cars on the road, but even more so in the rain, because depending where you're in the country, some people act like they've never seen rain before and drive like absolute maniacs. If you get caught in a rainstorm, also be careful of any standing water. Just like in a car, if you're moving quickly over a body of standing water, you can hydroplane and lose traction as well. And if the weather seems like it is truly unsafe, you can always pull over and wait for it to stop. I feel like the motorcyclist's instinct is to power through, but really no one is going to fault you if you pull off to a fuel station and enjoy a nice corn dog or Bosco stick while you wait for it to go over. Fear that I see younger, smaller, or female riders have is not being able to handle the physical demands of a motorcycle. And I feel like I could summarize why that is irrational by just showing a photo of an elderly, very out of shape man on a 900-pound Harley Davidson. The biggest obstacle for a shorter rider for a motorcycle is not just the weight, but the seat height. If a motorcycle is heavy and sits low to the ground, it has a super low center of gravity, and as long as your feet can flat foot, you should have no problem keeping a heavy bike upright while stopped. And the minute you get on the throttle, the bike has zero problem keeping itself upright. If a motorcycle is heavy and also tall, it can be a little uncomfortable for a smaller rider to keep it upright. But while it may be a little nerve-wracking at first, it is not impossible, and it becomes relatively easy to manage the weight. And if you are dead set on a bike that is taller and heavier, there are likely modifications you can do to lower the bike, like aftermarket suspension or lowering kits. But luckily, most really heavy bikes are usually pretty low, like a touring bike, and most really tall bikes are usually pretty light, like a dual sport. But truthfully, I've seen short kings who can barely keep a Harley Davidson bagger upright on both feet, rip huge rolling burnouts, and bigger dudes rip up the track on a Ninja 400. For the most part, a motorcycle does most of the work for you. And even if a bike doesn't feel 100% natural, you can get used to it pretty quick. Or find a different bike or install a lowering kit. No matter what size you are, don't feel intimidated by getting on a motorcycle. There are plenty of options or workarounds for all types of riders. And the last fear that new motorcyclists have is the fear of getting pulled over. Here's my experience with that. Take it with a grain of salt. This will obviously vary greatly on where you live in the country, but in my experience, there are usually two situations. If you ride a cruiser, especially a Harley, cops consider you a non-issue. They know a Harley can't go that fast, and there is that kind of Americana heritage thing Harley has that police usually enjoy. The other common situation is if you're on a super sport, and if you're already moving, a cop isn't going to even bother lighting you up because they know they can't catch you, and most states have no chase policies in place to prevent further harm or fatalities that can be caused by cop cars chasing motorcycles. The less common scenarios are if a police officer sees you do something dumb like a wheelie or a burnout or lane split in a non-lane splitting state while you're in a slower moving downtown area where you can't really speed away. And in that case, follow the standard getting pulled over procedure. Be calm, respectful, and don't get caught breaking two laws at once. So make sure you have your endorsement, your bike's registration, and proper insurance. A cop is far less likely to let you off if you did a wheelie and don't have insurance. Also, sometimes motorcycle cops are harder on other motorcyclists, so be prepared for that. I know some states that have big crazy group rides have a strained relationship between motorcyclists and police, but in my experience, it has never been a major issue. Just don't attract unwanted attention, and most importantly, don't get caught. Thanks for watching today's video. Let me know in the comments section what fears you had as a beginner motorcyclist. Fact: cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts, collard greens are all the same species of plant, Brassica oleracea. Goodbye.